Let us start. Good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo, and this is Monday Live, something we do every afternoon on Mondays to figure out the future of smart buildings, basically. Um, the panelists' profiles are on mondaylive.org if you want to see who we are. Reminder that the views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. Please do post comments and questions on the chat and Q&A. See, people are starting to do that, which is wonderful. And do complete the survey at the end. This slide deck that I'm showing you is on mondaylive.org if you want to see any of the links that we're talking about. So just as a reminder, the theme for January of 2021 is the future workforce. That's what we're going to be talking about today. That's the future workforce for smart buildings. This is our agenda. We'll just have a general chit chat about what's going on, and then we'll talk about job openings and the types of jobs that we're anticipating in smart buildings moving forward, and then have a general conversation. Next month, we're going to switch to a new theme or a new topic, and that is going to be how we move from smart to autonomous buildings. So that's we're going to kick that off next week. That will be the 1st of February, and that'll be 4 weeks worth of shows. Really looking forward to that. Some slides from people. Mark Peacock, I haven't actually had the time to go through this that much. You can get fired if you refuse to get COVID. Okay, so we'll talk about that, I'm sure, Mark. Some additional links from Mark. And
I gave you a twofer today.
You gave me a twofer. Okay,
I gave you a twofer.
Next week you don't get any. So Ken Sinclair talking about new vocation. Okay, let's open that up with Ken to explain, and Anna as well on, I don't know what this is all about. Roger is talking about prop tech and there being no slowdown in prop tech startup investment, which is good. And I saw a couple of articles. One is from ARC Advisory talking about Biden's energy plan, which is quite interesting article. The other one's kind of a big picture stuff on sort of a new economic theory. I know that's kind of very abstract, but this comes from Amsterdam, and I'm reminded that Amsterdam, or the Netherlands, is where a lot of capitalism kind of started with the futures trading thing with the tulips, if you remember that. So anyway, it's quite interesting to read. And John talking about impact to markets and landlords suffering. We'll talk about that. So let's throw it back to the group. So where should we start? Mark, why don't you go with your
Sure. So I find it interesting as we've continually progressed with getting a handle on COVID and everything, whether it be, in business or buildings, so forth and so on. There is now conversations going on whether or not whether a company can enforce that its employees must be vaccinated in order to keep their jobs. And basically what's come out of it is, yes, companies can enforce being vaccinated, and then if the person or persons choose not to, they can be fired. So I thought that was extremely interesting. And then as a caveat to that, at some point, maybe in a future discussion, is will building owners and operators require technicians and all building service providers to be vaccinated in order for them to work in their particular buildings, especially if they are requiring employees to be vaccinated. And the other one is what again, when we started talking about all this, I had brought up the point of a COVID certification program for buildings, and it is most definitely taking off. One of the links I share with you is a video. They've got major stars now talking about it for a well, health, and safety building moniker that buildings would earn. I mean, J-Lo, Lady Gaga, Robert De Niro, so forth and so on. So evidently this is starting to get a lot of traction. So something I think we should continually look at. So those are my two items for this week.
Thanks, Mark. Moving on to Ken, do you want to?
Sure. Okay. I'm working on your new vocation, building automation, and I'm basically that's my article that I'm pushing through to Connected Contractor. Will be online Thursday, and also will evolve to be our February theme. And I'm trying to capture all the things you folks are saying, and trying to kind of put this all to one URL, so that if somebody says, what is this building automation stuff, we can just send it to them and they can click on it, and it'll get them started and get them linked to a whole bunch of resources. That's my theory. I'm also playing on the word, your new vocation, building automation, both as a noun and a verb, because in fact, that's what we are doing, is we're building automation as well as the physical noun reference of a building. So that's kind of an interesting twist as well. So we've got a start on that. I got a good article. It's actually an interview from Cochrane, and they're just talking about the power of some of these new IoT sensors, and it's just kind of a new dimension. So we can see a little bit about that, talking about it. Basically, the other side of it is we're kind of looking at how did we all get so smart, or how did we actually get into this industry, and why are we still in it? It earns a great income for all of us. It's a great industry. It's a little bit complicated, but once you kind of get your head into it, it kind of rolls. So I think we have to explain to the young folks how this industry of ours works. And I'm seeing too is that the IoT folks, as they come into it with their skills and they sort of fall on our industry, whether it's data or whether it's these new microcomputers. I keep calling them microprocessors because of the old days, that's what they were, but now they're microcomputers. And basically all of those technologies are going to unearth our traditional ways of doing things, much as the DDC industry did back in the old days. And so I think we need to just get them to our industry, and they will then start doing data analytics, and they'll start to learn our industry through the data train. So anyway, just some ideas there at large.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ken. Anno.
Yeah, interesting article. If you follow the guys out of PERE, P-E-R-E, interesting magazine. In the real estate, an article, both JLL and CBRE are both showing significant growth in the real estate investment market in Asia, and probably turning the equation. As the article says, normally real estate happens first in the US and then the rest of the world follows. This time around 2021, they're predicting Asia is going to do a significant rebound in 2021, and I mean 15-20% growth they're talking about. A lot of it being driven by strong economic growth as they come out of the post-pandemic. They're already getting their vaccinations. They've done well, so their level of herd immunity is a lot lower because they're low to begin with. Even Singapore is now talking about relinquishing the need for stay at home, once you travel there if you've been vaccinated. So again, both JLL, CBRE showing significant, being very bullish in the Asia market and showing a significant rebound, which I read as a strong indicator for the US as well. We might be lagging, but it should reverberate back here.
Wonderful, thank you. And Anna, you have a personal news to tell everybody. Oh, he's disappeared. Okay, be like that. All right, Roger.
Yeah, just a couple of interesting articles, I think. There, one was it's a report published by Memori, but actually saying that over the past decade, maybe a little bit less than that, there's been nearly 20 billion invested in the building space, and the last 4 years have seen about the most activity, with about 136 startups being acquired in the last 3 years. So there's still an appetite for the marketplace to actually just grow and get the investment, which is good news. And similar article in the middle there, where it's actually saying that the working at home switch and digital meeting tools, etc. But it's actually saying that nearly 90% of prop tech investors believe the pandemic will accelerate real estate technology, which I think we covered previously, saying that we think that this past year has helped accelerate things along. And the final bit on the right is more general, but it's from PwC, but it kind of relates to what we've been talking about over the past months, and saying, okay, you've got your business strategy, but guess what? The rest of it is talent planning, learning and innovation, work environment, and employee expectations. So it's back to that 330-300 rule, and just saying, pretty much your business strategy is going to depend upon your new talent, your talent you've got, and building it and making sure that they're comfortable with everything in your business, which is something we've certainly touched on over the past month or so.
Great, thank you, Roger. And John, you.
Yeah, so the two that I highlighted this week, just trying to pick up what are the signals out there, right? Anno just gave us a signal from the Asia area, but there's evidence that rents in U.S. cities and highly desirable U.S. cities are dropping. Maybe this just poked a bubble in it. And then the other article is surveys from some of the major real estate participants or companies out there. What are people looking for in order to come back to the office, right? I guess I would say I'd challenge anybody to come up with information that leads to any more than 50-50 on this. 50% of the people are still saying people aren't coming back, and 50% saying they are. Sunday morning today, they had, two tech CEOs, and one said they're absolutely coming back, and the other one says, I'm closing the office. Not the business, the office, right? So it's still, unknown. I think both are going to happen, right? But what does that mean for the people who own and operate buildings and may want to make investments to make them more intelligent and efficient?
Great, thank you, John. And any other topics or news or things that we're seeing out there that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I guess just picking up on what John just said about the 50-50. I heard today that City of New York lost over 500,000 jobs last year, but which represents about 50% of the million jobs that were lost in all of New York State. And given how restrictive they are about coming back to work, I would say that's, at least for New York City, their prospects can't be all that great. And I know my daughter lives up there, works for a major investment banking firm, and they're still not going back to the office. So I think it ties into COVID. When the vaccine is available, you'll start to see people go back to work. But what I would say is when you got 500,000 people who lost their jobs, and a lot of that is in the support services, particularly retail and food services. If the companies don't come back en masse, those jobs aren't coming back. They're not coming back. So I would say, at least for the major cities, this is not a good harbinger of how they're going to look at least here in the U.S., despite what Anna's saying internationally.
Was that specific to office jobs, Steve, or?
No, the 500,000 total in New York City and 1 million overall total. But they did focus, this Fox, I think it was a business report. It was, and it just said that a lot of them were in the food services.
I was going to say, I follow the restaurant industry pretty closely, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was, I want to say it's in the 100,000 range, just in New York City area from food services.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And I think it was a little higher when they took into account total hospitality.
Right.
And that's one of the, I was going to say, this is one of the reasons why I've been hell bent on trying to get the word out about reskilling all of these people for our industry. I mean, again, we're going to, hopefully this will be a leeway in Anto, that, we're all looking for people and, to come into our industry, and heck, let's get these people reskilled. I don't have the answer on how to, but we need to.
Well, I think early on when we started all this nearly a year ago, we talked about redeploying people from the hospitality industry in particular, people who had, basic customer service skill sets already, right? They understood how to create a good experience for your customers, how to answer calls, be inquisitive, understand the other person's point of view, and then we could teach them a number of the skill sets, especially in the front end. When I think about our business in terms of, basic customer service in the front kind of position that answers the phone, that's something that could be taught to somebody pretty quickly. How to look up products and pricing and availability is pretty easy to teach somebody, but finding somebody who really does well at customer service, that's a little bit harder to teach than it is, it's kind of either you have it or you don't have it, right?
I think, when you say that, Tracy, you think I was having a discussion with someone else the other day and saying that, really the customers mostly interact with, the order entry people and technical support. The rest of the organization, they rarely bump. Even the sales guy might be once a quarter, but the person they're always on the phone to, and some of those skills certainly could be moved across, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this,
and you can, if people have the right desire to learn and interest in what we do, I can tell you one of my tech support team members, when I hired him, his last job was bellhop at a local hotel here in town. So he was a techie, by hobby, and we kind of taught him, sent him to classes, did a bunch of things to bring his skill set along, and now he's one of our best technical support people.
great. So this is probably a good time to talk about our main topic, which is really the jobs available in this space, and also specifically the types of jobs. And I'm gonna bring on a guest, Brad Warren from Alberio Energy. And so we're going to ask him to tell us about the sort of jobs that Alberio have as a company, and he can do that. And then once we do that, really want to give each of the members of Monday Live here an opportunity to do the same. So we can sort of see the breadth of the types of jobs that is available now and also in the future. So Brad, welcome to the group. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and Mark, thank you for the invite as well. So guys, my name is Brad Warren. I'm the HR director with a company called Alberio Energy. We are in the building automation controls business and also have a division that does energy procurement. Personally, I've been involved in human resources work for 23 years now. So I've seen a couple different ebbs and flows of things. And I think in our industry, kind of what we're talking a little bit about in this discussion is a challenge that we all face, right? We've got a a large group of employees that in the baby boomer category that are exiting the workforce, which as they work to migrating to a retirement stage or end of career life cycles type of stage, compounded with a shortage of qualified folks that are already in the business, and obviously it creates a shortfall for our business and probably for the same business that many of you are engaged in. I certainly don't have profess to have all the answers. I know that we've talked about, you hear things about, kickoff grassroots efforts in STEM programs in high schools and colleges. I'd worked with a fire protection engineering company for probably a good number of years, probably about almost 8 years. And one of the biggest challenges we had was trying to find fire protection engineers, because there were only 3 schools in the United States that actually would generate those folks into the profession. So it was always a challenge to find that. So we found ourselves reinvesting in a lot of those types of areas to get board seats or chairman seats on their respective universities, just so that we could get first crack at some of their people. Yeah, certainly open to some additional discussion. I think Tracy's point about the desire to reinvest in retraining is something that certainly needs to have a greater look at. One of the challenges that I face at Alburio is I often have managers who will tell me that they need to have a certain requirement, and they won't budge too much outside of that requirement. Whereas if I can get about 7 of the 10 boxes ticked, let's work and see if we can create those other 3 over time, or something of that nature. So I think again, Tracy's example is a great one, to reinvest in that retraining and being able to open your mind up to a bit of those types of things. Anto, I don't know if you had specific questions, but I kind of jumped right into a little bit of an overview of some of the challenges that we were facing.
And that's great. I appreciate that. Can you sort of tell us the types of jobs that you have open right now, and the sort of any trends that you're sort of seeing in terms of what you're having problems filling, or what you're not having problems filling, etc. Just the trends. So. Sure.
So I'd say a large portion of our workforce, we have about 1,000 employees, and I would probably say about 65% of those folks are in the field. So, field technicians, commissioning folks, different things of that nature. We also have a large group of engineers, programmers, and so on. Prior to COVID, the technicians were the hardest positions for us to find. When you were approaching unemployment rates of 2% in the Tampa market, it was almost impossible to find anybody that would come in and be able to do any work there. So they were by far the hardest positions for us to fill. During COVID, the challenge was we had plenty of technicians, but job sites were closing or shutting down or taking extra precautions. And as such, we had folks that we would have to pull out. Steve mentioned the folks in New York City. We had close to 70 jobs put on hiatus in New York City. And as a result, that had a huge impact on, our staffing, and a lot of those frontline technicians, we ended up having to either furlough or reassign to other divisions and that thing. During the COVID period, we actually saw that we were an attractive option for employers in the engineering space, and also even in the programming space. Believe it or not, we were still able to find people. Post-COVID, and I shouldn't say post because we're not out of it yet, but on the back end as we approach a year anniversary of what we've been dealing with, our biggest challenge now is salespeople that are not filling that pipeline and preparing, our teams to be able to move forward. So we've gone from a very much blue collar shortage in technicians to a professional, spike, to now finding ourselves on the short end of having qualified salespeople that will help build our backlog.
That's interesting. So thank you for that. Incidentally, there's a couple of questions asking for your contact details. So maybe if you care to put either your email or your LinkedIn URL on the chat, that would be great. If you want to do that,
Absolutely.
you don't have to do it. So give it over to the rest of the team. What positions are you seeking to fill, and what kind of skills? I don't know who wants to start.
I'll
I can,
start.
oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say for us, we've got actually several right now. So like everybody else, software engineers, especially with experience in and around Linux and something like that, we are constantly recruiting for that. It's not, all right, we got one and we shut the recruitment process down for that. This is something that basically our HR team and the executives, we all are constantly looking for software engineers.
Mark,
Second,
is that because of turnover, people job hopping, which is normal in that kind of area, or is it just growth?
growth, contrary, it's growth. It's
Okay.
100% growth, which is really good. Second for us is project management personnel with some expansion into some new markets and things like that. Getting really good project management personnel is something that we're currently looking for as well. And we've actually got 4 categories right now. Project estimators, we're looking for 2 or 3 in that particular area. And me personally, for my group, I'm looking for product marketing people. And I'm actually looking for a few. So for us, it's, as I said, it's constant that we seem to be recruiting and, trying to get the word out and so forth and so on. I will say this, that I think for all of us, and here's a question for everybody, having a person located at the corporate offices is no longer a requirement. We all live in a remote world. So I'm curious, when everybody else speaks, do you mandate that the person, quote unquote, needs to be based or work from a centralized corporate office?
Okay, I think
That-
Mark.
Are you
That's great,
asking that
Mark.
as a question mark or making that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. A question. Yeah. And
That's a little loaded for me right now. So right now, obviously, it'd be perfectly fine they could work from home or be wherever. But I'm not sure we're at the place where we want to completely give up on the idea that at some point we'd like them to come to the office to work too. So little tricky. I mean, right now is a great opportunity, I think, to hire somebody wherever they are, let them work from home, almost on a trial basis. And then if someday you needed them to come to the office, you could make a decision about, are they worth it or not worth it to relocate, or are they willing or not willing to relocate? So now's the time. I think it's more important that we fill our bench and our roster with A players everywhere that we possibly can, and deal with, are they going to come to the office or not later, maybe.
I think another point is the most of the younger folks that we're bringing in, or even folks from outside of our industry, job crafting has become a big thing. And I think if we actually try and tell them what it is we think they're going to do, we serve ourselves a great disjustice. I think we need to basically explore what capabilities this person has and how we could actually use their capabilities. An example might be is maybe he's a good Unix guy, but his hobby is creating YouTubes. If that's true, then he could be probably very useful to our company creating YouTubes. And we didn't even have that on the table as his job. But if he comes with that skill set, and again, the other thing is their curiosity and passion, whatever it is they want to do, is something we have to explore and grow. So I think preconceived deciding, I need this kind of person and that kind of person will basically keep you moving in the same direction if you want to actually move in a new direction, if you want to basically have IT, have a greater effect on what it is you're doing, I think you need to invite these people in, sit down with them, and see what skill set they have, and how does their skill set work with your company. And I think you'll find some amazing results.
So let's move on to Bill or Steve. One of you want to talk about what you have open and what you see trends? Steve?
Yeah, so my answer to that is right now, we're not, the positions we would hire for if we were expanding would be in software almost exclusively. So we're not to the point yet where we're filling out in marketing positions. Sales positions is probably the next area that we would bring people on. Although in that area, what we've done up to this point is have relationships with what I would characterize as manufacturers reps, as opposed to full-time employees, and then or sales agents, if you will. But from a product standpoint, we're definitely software engineers, and that's the main, because that's our business. We're a software platform company.
So on that, Steve, I'll just sort of echo what you just said. My company, Patty, is in a similar situation. We're in a development phase, so we don't actually have any jobs open as such. But I actually echo what Ken was saying about how I would go about looking for team members when we're in a position to do that. It's really more about the character and the abilities of the individuals, and the alignment of those things. That's kind of the way I look at it, because we're kind of a startup. So that's kind of perspective.
Would you still say though, Anto, that they need some core, if you're software as we are too? I'm looking for 2, even 3 software engineers, but I've got some core requirements that I need, but then, happy to look outside after that.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, if I could weigh in on that.
I would say yes, because if there is a task to be done, obviously that has to be done. Right. So it's not just getting somebody to just have a body, but I think there's always a sort of 2 sides of hiring somebody, getting the task done, and whether they fit to the company. I'm just saying that's more important to me.
Yeah, so Anno, I know for us, our core team, when we look to expand, which we've done a couple times now over the last year, we have a core set of skills we look for, because we're cloud-based. There's a certain language that we use, certain database we use, etc. So ideally, if the person has experience in that, if you will, in that software architecture, that's the ideal. You're not going to often find that. So the process we go through is we have that individual interview with the team. We do code reviews on things that they do know. And if they, like, say, for example, they don't know our specific language that we use to write in, but they have other languages that are comparable, we'll factor in that learning curve time for them to get up to speed. So it might be a month that we need to realize that they're just going to be acclimating to the new environment before they can actually do anything productive. But because you're rarely going to find the ideal person that checks all the boxes. So you got to live with that. But we use our existing team to qualify whether they really got the right mentality, proven skills, going to fit from a chemistry standpoint, and then then you give them some time to get up to speed.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking for. I'm being very specific. I'm looking for full stack Node.js type guys. But more interesting, I'm actually looking for machine learning people who can do machine learning modeling at the moment. Not data scientists, not data engineers, but machine learning engineers, which is an interesting domain at the moment, trying to find people in that space.
I bet you that's really hard.
But Mark, one of the interesting things, I was coming back to your question about whether they should be in the office. I think it was Mark, I can't remember now, who asked about whether they should be in the office or not in the office and stuff. So I wonder if our travel budgets will actually change. So one of the things I've noticed, of course, is, my travel budget this year compared to last year significantly less. Sales marketing is being engaged a lot more successfully on, Zoom type meetings. And I could see offsetting my sales marketing travel with more Zoom. And then could I take that budget and, allocate it to, in our case, all our guys are remote. Everyone's been remote. We've been remote for 3 years and we'll continue to be so. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we'll need people to come or be at one spot. But I am interested in having occasionally, team meetings, people coming together for a while, for a short period of time. And I'd be more interested in spending my travel budget, bringing those people in and offsetting it using more Zoom meetings for sales marketing, kind of doing a bit of a shift in my travel cost, I guess.
So, okay. So Bill, did you want to say something while you're driving down I-5 there?
Backwards.
You're muted as well. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Yep, the autonomous RV. Thanks. I'll just say Saucy Box operates effectively across verticals. And last year we saw growth in all verticals, but 60 or 70% growth in building automation, autonomous buildings. And so we're actively searching for folks right now. And for us, it's all about marketing and awareness. So we're looking for salespeople across Texas and California and so forth. Technology speaks for itself. I mean, I think another great show would be best practices for hiring and all that, but give me smart, you could teach them anything. Give me smart, you could teach them anything. So that's us. We're looking to grow awareness. So we're adding headcount. Not that we're about throwing bodies for revenue numbers, but we do think there's enough right out there for us to go out and grow this year. So if you know anybody, send them my way.
All right, moving on. Leighton, do you want to chime in on this? You're muted.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at the next stage of growth and development, looking to bring on 5 to 7 people. And we've kind of got them in 2 categories. One would be the application engineer who knows how to get data up and out of the buildings. And the second layer would be someone who understands the energy industry and looking at the regulatory environment under the new administration. The indicators are that the DSM programs in the regulated states are going to skyrocket. Since I'm out here in Mountain West, I am surrounded by 5 states that are regulated. So in conversations with the utilities, we're looking for ways to provide our data analytics to be able to support their programs. In other words, look at 1,000 buildings, develop the demand profiles for the top 100 or so that need attention, and those become the focus of the utility and the DSM program. So we're finding that to be a very effective entree point into this new market condition. So the challenge is really finding someone who understands buildings and also understands the impact of the equipment operations, control sequences, the control strategies in context of the power purchasing agreement. So it's going to be an interesting hybrid, but it's not too hard to learn about the supply side if you know the building. So that's really where our focus is right now.
Wonderful, thank you. John?
Yeah, I approached it a little different, not jobs, but skill sets, which maybe is a bit of an alignment with what Ken is saying, because we've seen the ability to adjust jobs for good people that have useful skill sets, right? So these aren't all required by every person, but these are the things we look for strengths are. Programming knowledge. There's a difference between being a hardcore software guy. How does this stuff work, right? You understand the principles, the concepts, et cetera, right? Database knowledge, right? How do databases work? What are the principles involved in working with data, structured data databases, right? And then the same thing on building equipment systems knowledge, right? You may not be a chiller mechanic, but you better understand the elements of a chiller plant, right? And that leads you to then control systems knowledge. Now you have a chiller plant. What types of controls would be involved to control that, right? This leads to technical sales. We find that our sales team has to be very technical. So you need to look for people who are interested in sales, have that background, but also can carry a lot of this technical ability with them. And that all boils down to the last thing we look for is good communication skills, right? Because if you can teach somebody or educate them, I won't say teach, but educate them on maybe a facet of the job they don't understand, you want them to be able to then communicate with customers, partners, et cetera. So, you know, in our world where we're really working with analytics and creating value out of data, those are the key elements. And again, you can have a different mix that might fit a different role, from technical sales to technical support to being a programmer. And again, there's multiple levels of programmers, right? An app developer versus a core platform developer, or somebody working, you know, on the bare metal of an embedded product, right? So those are the key things that get our attention, and you have to have a number of them to be able to play in our industry.
Jim Lee, want to chime in on this?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Anto. I have a little bit of a different philosophy. We have very, very low turnover at the company. I call it the Roach Motel, because, you know, the average tenure of people that work for us is often 20 years. And so we're not as focused on getting specifics right away. I like to hire physics PhDs because they're cheap and they're smart and they can do anything, from software to Linux to data acquisition. So that's a good philosophy. For when we need very specific skills, we'll hire specialized contractors. So for instance, you know, if I needed a very specific database skill or government skills for defense contracting, we'll just hire specific consultants in those areas. But the only place where I really am looking for people and need to grow is really on the sales side. And there's a very complex animal we found over the years, because we're, you know, effectively trying to do enterprise sales to the janitor. And it takes a very interesting skill set to pull that off.
Thank you. Tracy, did you want to chime in some?
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, it's interesting. I'm seeing a trend here among a lot of us. There seems to be the great search for software talent, kind of across the board, and we're no different, right? We've been moving from more traditional product and solution sales to more platform sales and more IoT kind of a mix in it. So not just traditional HVAC applications necessarily, but other things that go in buildings as well. And you know, we're looking for talent kind of across the entire software stack, right? We have a backend database all the way through a UI like everybody else. And then once we collect all that data, we've got to learn about it and analyze it. So we need people who have skill sets in machine learning and analytics, data analysis. So I don't think we're real unique. And I concur with Jim, you know, it's great. We come up with the better mousetrap, but you still got to find somebody who can sell the thing. So they don't sell themselves, that's for sure. And doing those complex sales is not, you know, you can't hire just any old salesperson. It has to be somebody with some technical understanding and can explain it. So usually like a sales.
I wanted to add something to actually what both you're saying, but Jim Lee had made the point about, you know, we're always kind of looking maybe down for less education so we can afford the person or groom them in. But the other phenomena that's out there is we have all of these folks that are coming out of universities with doctorates, and they basically have they've been invested in education for the last bunch of years. They have certainly demonstrated that they can learn almost anything. Unfortunately, they don't have a job, and you can actually hire them for less money, and they basically have the potential of growing into incredible positions. And I know in the consulting company that the kids took over the consulting company, they had a lot of success in that area and retraining these people. And of course, retraining them is much easier because they're used to educating. themselves. The other thing is they have typically spent their last 4 or 5 years self-sufficient, living in a small room, writing their theses and things like that. So they're used to working remotely. They've got all this independent. They're very much attracted to the work anywhere environment. So don't rule those people out. Basically, talk to them, take a look at their skill sets, and I think there's some amazing combinations, and I think that would help grow our industry. Certainly, that diversity has really worked well in the consulting company.
I think that that's a great point, Ken. The key thing is that you need to give these people self-determination, and they need to be working on something that they think is meaningful. Otherwise, they're not going to stay around. So hiring the PhDs is, I found, a great way to go, but you better not slot them into something that's not interesting or doesn't have some societal value, because they'll simply find something else to do otherwise.
Okay, in this article I'm just writing right now, we come. I'm actually now listening to my consultant is Oprah, and basically Oprah magazine has got this: consider the clear path to passion. And I think if you look at everybody on the screen here, the one thing we all have is a passion for this industry, for whatever reason. I have no idea, but we actually all are very passionate about this industry. And how do we create passion? Because that's exactly what we have to do. And so they have this thing called the clear path. And the first C stands for curiosity. They have to have a curiosity of what the heck is it you guys do and why would I want to do it? They need to learn. They have to have enthusiasm, and they have to be aware. All of these bits and pieces are part of, getting that person, hooking them in. But once they have that passion, they're in the industry. And once they're in our industry, we all know nobody gets out. Nobody gets out.
So I got a question on.
I need to ask Brad a question.
I do too. I have a question for him too.
Because, I mean, Brad, you've heard these comments, and most of the people on the Money Life group here are obviously sort of software vendors. You're slightly different. You're more of a channel participant. So when you hear all of this, the jobs described are quite different from the job that you were describing. What's your reaction to that, and what's your comment?
Again, I think it goes back to some of my opening comments. There's a general shortage, and to Ken's point, I think that there are a lot of folks that come out of universities that don't have a lot of work experience, and the challenge there sometimes can be that they've been caught in academia primarily because they haven't been able to get a work visa to get employed in the U.S., which is obviously a challenge, right? I mean, H-1Bs are very much a scarcity still, even in this day and age. So I think that the challenge is all the same, right? I mean, we're all fighting a battle on limited resources to try to find the folks. And then the challenge is, once we get them in, to Jim's point, you need to keep them engaged, because it's not so much about the retention at that point, or it's about the retention more so than the attraction, to try to keep them so that they can never get out, as Ken said.
So Brad, I have a question for you, Mark. So given the size of Alberio, multiple offices and things like that, do you find your recruitment is easier in certain parts of the country or in certain locations versus others? How do you kind of look at what you guys do to filling job opportunities with respect to that?
Yeah, good question, Mark. So geographically, I don't know that it's that dramatically different. We do find that we have, for whatever reason, a higher retention rates in the South. So people seem to be a little more or a little less willing to job hop in our Alabama division or in our 2 Florida locations. Whereas we do seem to find that in other divisions such as New York and San Diego, we do have a little bit more transient type of employee that I guess maybe because opportunities are more plentiful. From a recruiting standpoint, I added a talent acquisition manager to our team in 2018. Added another corporate recruiter in the fall of 2019, and I'll be adding another recruiting resource in the next 2 months that'll handle the East Coast. We're putting probably about 120 people on our payroll each year. We've got about a 95% retention rate within our business of existing employees. So that helps us with some of our growth, because again, it becomes less about the attraction and more about the retention, after you get them on board. I did see there was a question about, in the forum here about understanding, what are some best methods to attract folks. And I would tell you, don't sell your LinkedIn network short. When I started with Alburio, I think Alburio Energy had 120 followers. Think about it. I mean, it was a company that had been around for, at that point, about 3 years, 120 followers for, a $100 million business. We closed 2020 with over 7,800 followers on our LinkedIn. And part of that is because we've made a conscious effort of putting ourselves out there. Obviously, our M&A strategy has been such that puts us in the news with organic press releases. But for me, from a recruiting standpoint, I created a recruiting campaign called "I Work for Alburio Energy." We highlight employees, why they chose Alburio Energy, why they choose to stay at Alburio Energy. And then ultimately the viewer in that LinkedIn post can go to our website to see what positions are open. So I really can't stress the importance of that vehicle for trying to attract talent, especially in some of the more professional sectors like engineers and software programmers and things like that. Technicians maybe is a different approach, but LinkedIn works as a great tool to help attract those folks and the other categories that we've talked about today.
How about internships? Do you guys and everybody else too? So I know we've been very successful with the younger crowd and offering internships. And this, once they're approaching the end of their internship, the question we always get: can I stay here and work permanently? And yeah, this is great. How about yourself with Alburio?
Yeah, we kicked off our internship, a grow your own type of philosophy in earnest back in 2018. We started slow. I think we partnered with the New Jersey Institute of Technology. We placed 4 interns for that summer, exposing them to different things throughout the summer. And we ended up ultimately hiring 3 of the 4 on a permanent capacity. In 2019, we expanded the internship program into a couple other divisions: San Diego, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and with smaller sizes, right? I think the New York division was one that was really booming at that time. The other new locations only took on about 1 or 2 interns, and we were able to retain probably 50% on a permanent hire capacity thereafter. So, and then of course with the 2020, it just became somewhat prohibitive to be able to have people do internships and not being in the office and different things that we've already talked about on the call. Became a little bit of a challenge, but we're looking to breathe new life into it. Especially, we've had 7 acquisitions this year in 2020, or last year in 2020. So we're looking to expand that internship program into a number of new regions where we hadn't previously launched it.
So I just want to give the opportunity to anybody that's not talked about the sort of trends of skill sets and things on the group.
Yeah, just a quick one really. I think also we've seen the roles in the industry evolve. One stage everybody was desperate solely for application engineers, but as tools have got smarter, the pressures have came off that a little bit. And I think with sales guys, I can remember being in a room and asking a question about 100 sales guys, how many of them started out as engineers, and they all put their hand up, so everybody could, whereas, latter days, certainly in my last company, we were employing people from Samsung and Motorola and things, and they were coming from different places. And I think it's got less important that people are always saying, we need someone from the industry. And I think those roles have evolved, as standards become more applicable, and that the selling kind of techniques evolve more around, normal type sales things, and not as technically biased as it was, because there's different people perhaps you're selling to. So I think that's changed. And we're seeing here in Europe that everybody's still very busy, but they are looking for people across the board, certainly support people, and salespeople seem to be to the fore. And I think that it's really now people are opening up, but a lot of people are taking on interns or younger kids to start and opening apprenticeships. And certainly all the bigger companies now have got, years ago, people had, the manufacturers had lots of apprentices and stuff, and then all the system integrators would just take them from them once they'd finished. Now all the system integrators are actually the ones that actually bringing kids in, as well as the manufacturers. So it's looking a little bit healthier, I think, from the groundswell upwards from that point of view.
Yeah, if I could just kind of piggyback on your comment, Roger, Phil mentioned something about give me someone smart and he'll take it from there. Years ago, when I was very early in my career, I remember being in a large meeting, with 100 people, and our district manager asked, all of his salespeople to stand up. And so our business development team, which is about 12 people, they stood up. And he reminded them, he asked the question again. He said, no, I'd like all of my salespeople to stand up. And after the third time, when he had the whole room standing, people started to get the message. And right, you guys are way smarter in this business than I will ever be. But I learned the lesson very clearly then that, I'm a salesperson too, even though I'm in HR, whether I'm selling an employee. But even when I mentioned that I work with a fire protection engineering company, I was visiting a university with my son when he was getting ready to choose a college. And I remember looking up and seeing what appeared to be a corroded sprinkler head coming from, this building. So I grabbed my cell phone and I took a quick picture of it. And I brought it back to the guy who sells this stuff. And I was like, hey, here's an opportunity for you, because these obviously aren't working anymore. And sure enough, he ended up going on that customer and trying to get it. So I became that salesperson. And I think we have to make sure people understand a little bit that it's more than just whatever lane we're supposed to be in. Sometimes the lane gets a little wide and gives us a little bit more room to kind of expand ourselves a bit.
That's a fantastic message there, Brad. Yeah. So we're about a minute or two from the end. Any big aha sort of moments from anybody that you want to share?
I wanted to push in what Schneider Electric is doing. So they've kind of taken on a idea is when you start with them, after they give you your job, they turn you into an apprentice, and they basically run that through a year. I just did a post on the chat, and this is part of the article that's going to go online Thursday, and also will be part of our theme of February. But it's an interesting program because a lot of these folks are actually been joining my LinkedIn group. I'd also like to say I too agree that LinkedIn is the best method for us to get connected. We have now over 20,000 folks connected to automated buildings, and it's also taken on a life of its own in the fact that it's starting to build itself. The other interesting thing is the automated buildings group, which is just sort of a banter about what's going on on the magazine that you can post on, has also taken on a life of its own. So that's kind of an interesting thing, is you actually get these things started on LinkedIn, and then there's very little maintenance other than just keeping the naked girls off of it. It's pretty simple. So anyway, just a couple of ideas there. But I we all should take a look at what Schneider Electric is doing. I think the Europeans are ahead of us in basically understanding that we need to get a better method of getting folks into our industry.
And I think my last big takeaway, right? I mean, hiring people and the need to hire people is always the signs of a rebound, right? And people coming back and wanting to do things. And especially, with the bulk of these sales engineering types. So to me, I read that as all really positive signs for 2021, right?
That's even better. last words to leave this show. So thank you, Brad, and thanks everybody for great conversation today. And we'll put this on YouTube. It'll be out tomorrow morning on our YouTube channel. And talking about LinkedIn, Monday Live is on LinkedIn. So please do follow and like and do all of the other stuff and comment there. And with that, it's a wrap for today. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
I know.
Thank you for having me.
Later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
Bye, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brad.